Welcome back, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Holding my mic in my hand.
We're back after
on my
a
stand.
long hiatus from the podcast.
Yeah, it's been a big sabbatical here, but here we are. What episode is
Episode
this?
48
48
of the Twinsies
folks.
podcast
48
/ videocast.
/ videocast.
And today we're just catching up, right?
Yeah, man. All the things have happened.
All the things have happened.
A lot of things have happened.
I can't even remember when our last episode was.
It's at least a month.
Episode 47 was a while ago.
Yeah. What do we
June
got here?
11th.
June 11th.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. It's been 2 months.
2 months.
Quite the hiatus, but we're on Spotify now.
We're on Spotify.
Which is cool. Spotify is my preferred platform. I feel like Apple is, maybe it's not awkward, but I always find it awkward trying to find podcasts and whatnot. I think Spotify is easier.
Their search function's not great.
No.
But we're here on a Friday morning at 8 a.m. I'm sweating.
It's officially the fall.
It's the fall, but it doesn't feel like the fall yet.
Yeah, still warm. However, key for us is no more morning sessions, which is a godsend.
School is now officially in session.
Summer hours are rough on us,
Mm-hmm.
which is part of the reason for this sabbatical, which we're not going to apologize for. Like, sorry.
I know people are clamoring for an apology. We got so many
Our
emails.
75 readers.
Where's
or
Twinsies?
listeners. So I'm not sorry. This was just one of the things that couldn't get done during a summer where a lot of stuff just didn't get done. We had a lot of social media stuff planned, video stuff planned. We had a very pie in the sky idea for the summer, and a lot of it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
But we're welcoming a great video intern, social media intern today in an hour. So we're excited about that. And we've hit fall hours, so we now have our mornings and afternoons back.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of a revamped business model going forward. So
We're back on the horse.
yeah, some amount of horses.
Yep.
So I just got back from a trip.
Dan, where'd you get back from?
I was in Boston, and then I was in the Dominican Republic. And I've had an interesting networking year. So starting this time last year, I did my first speaking gig, and then I went back there the same time this year for the second time. It's awkward saying that. To Sabre Seminar. So Sabre Seminar last year was my first public speaking gig. I had about six additional ones I think last year, and then came back for my second. And it just in that year's time, I've met a lot of people kind of on the road, and one of which was this guy Pete Caliendo, who's from Chicago, and he does sort of these cultural tours with baseball teams to Cuba, Italy, Spain, Tokyo, and the Dominican Republic. So he just gets a couple coaches that he trusts, and he kind of gathers up a group of 12 kids, and they go and they play against the local teams from that country. So I was one of 3 coaches, along with a guy named Darren Gurney and another guy named Darren Seiler from Maryland. Darren Seiler's from Maryland, Darren Gurney's from New York. And so they brought a couple kids from their programs as well. That's part of it, is kind of recruiting players. And we toured the local academies in the Dominican Republic, which was a somewhat eye-opening experience because there's a lot of poverty there. Lucas is going to go turn off our mail noises that you just heard over the speaker, and so yeah, it was interesting to say the least. It was a very cool trip for me. Only a second time I've been out of the country aside from Canada, which doesn't really count. Canada's not really a country.
It's like America Junior.
America Junior. But I mean, quick takeaways from that were just obviously, I think it's cliche to go into, oh, we're so lucky for what we have. But it's very true. We brought a lot of donated equipment. I shot out a quick Facebook message, and our families here at Warbird, being awesome that they are, brought me a ton of gear, used cleats and gloves, and I brought about 20 gloves and about 30 pairs of cleats so I could fit in my one bag. But it was really appreciated. I mean, there were a lot of kids taking the field on these dusty fields with no cleats, or with cleats that were completely, the metal was completely worn down to the very bottom, which is, you never see that here in America. Kids get rid of their cleats every year. They get a new glove every year. But most of those kids never get a new glove. They don't have helmets. That was the big thing, actually, they were talking about. Because we had there's a kid who goes to an American high school. He's from the DR, and he's hopeful to play college baseball in the United States. But he was sort of our tour guide, and he was telling us just, a lot of ins and outs. And he's like, yeah, a lot of these academies really need helmets more than anything, because and we saw it because guys, they had like maybe 2 or 3 per team, and they would get a hit and they would run and give their helmet to the next batter. And he's like, you know, that's it's rough. He said because a kid died actually last year. A kid was stealing third, catcher threw down, hit him in the jaw, and he said he went down, he wasn't breathing. People thought he was faking, but he died on the spot. So it's a tough, you know, and they have such passion for the game, and they are very good. I mean, every kid that we played with was good. I'm sure there's obviously some selection with that where, you know, in America, the kids that aren't as good, they still get to play on teams.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
out there they probably get selected and they're probably done. So I don't know.
They would just go play soccer. Like, what do you do if you're not good enough?
I'm not sure, but we didn't see any kids who like pushed the ball. You know, everyone had a good arm. Everyone played the game really hard. Everyone had very smooth infield mechanics. It was like the Wild West. I mean, when you play in professional baseball, all the guys talk about like rookie ball, how the Dominican players look, and they're like, yeah, they can all like swing the bat like crazy. They can field and they can throw, but they often just don't throw strikes. They often strike out a lot, and we saw basically the same thing. I mean, our team was 5-2 against these teams, which to me was surprising because we were an average talent team at best. But we got walked 15 times a game. I mean, they made some errors. The fields were rough. You're going to make errors no matter how good you are. But they struck out a lot, and they walked a lot of guys. So it was kind of like the Wild West. And they throw every ball as hard as they can. So, you know, when you're stealing, they're throwing at 105% down to second base, and there's just a higher.
You don't have a helmet on.
No, you don't have a helmet on, and there's just a lot of overthrows. I mean, because they get that ball and they wing it, and they're moving, they're throwing on the run a lot. So they develop those skills, but like I said, it was kind of the Wild West on the field, and that's kind of the way you describe it on the roads as well. There's like very rudimentary, what's the word?
Honor system on the roads?
Yeah, there's like just you use your horn, you honk at everyone. Our bus driver, we went up to Puerto Plata, which is a beach town, which is like an hour commute to play one day, and it was just like through the hills kind of, and we passed like 4 different times, passing on the left, like when it's a 2-lane, just like passing on the left. And it's like, hey, there is a car, and we can see it, and it's coming. They're like, okay, you got 30 people.
Sir.
There's 30 people in this bus, but no, it's fine. All right, we'll just sneak in front. This is terrifying at times, but and there's really only stoplights and like traffic lights at like very major highways. Other than that, you're just creeping out into the road and you just go, and people just like don't hit each other.
Yeah, that's
traffic is just like don't hit each other. That's traffic there.
What kind of how was your cuisine?
So they kind of urge kids to eat at some of the like American restaurants just because they don't want kids to get sick so much, and they know a lot of restaurants that they trust, so we like team dinners for like authentic food. But
who's like the governing body, or like
just the company, Caliendo Sports.
Gotcha.
All. So I mean they've done this for a long time, but if you get too adventurous, like a certain amount of people will probably get sick from food or something like that. So moderately adventurous, but I love chicken and rice and all that stuff. I've eaten that a bunch before in the past in American Latin restaurants, but so got similar amounts, and you can get lunch there for like $2 American, which is pretty solid. Unless you're buying Subway, in which case it's still like $7, which is
what?
Yeah, a waste of time.
Way to go, Subway.
Yeah, I guess their prices are constant no matter where you are. So anyway. So, Lucas.
Yes, Dan.
Let's recap your summer. June and July. It's been a while.
Yeah. What have I been doing? So we got done. When did our team get done? The first week in July, and then since then, right around then is when I started planning for being the strength coach at Heartland Community College.
Yes.
Which I'll be doing this. That'll start in full gear next week. And I just like spent some time. I traveled a little bit. I went to my timeline is messed up, but I went to DC to see a friend, and I love DC. It's one of my favorite cities that I've been to. And I just spent some knowing that this upcoming like fall and winter is going to be very, very, very busy. I've kind of just spent some time chilling and like taking it slow for a second, knowing that stuff's going to hit the fan. But it's been a lot of I've been reading a lot, just kind of like making sure I have all my T's crossed and I's dotted in terms of getting ready to. Well, I've written probably 75% of. You're laughing. I did that backwards.
No.
Oh.
Do you remember in Wayne's World the joke where he's looking at the guy and he's like, "Oh yeah, we're just gonna." He's getting paperwork for their festival, and he's looking at the guy who's got like an eye patch, or is like, "Oh, he's got a fake eye."
Oh.
And he's like, "Yeah, we're gonna make sure we cross our T's and dot our lowercase J's."
But what was I saying? Oh, I'm probably 75% done with like the first phase of writing the programs for the 4 competitive sport teams at Heartland, which are men's and women's soccer, baseball, and softball.
So what does that process look like? How does one accomplish?
It's actually kind of interesting in that I've never really like done that before, where you sit down. Basically, the first thing I had to do was meet with all the coaches and figure out, okay, what are your competitive seasons, and like when do these kids need to be super fresh? When's the chance that they can actually like make some progress in the gym and get after it and that kind of thing? And soccer, I mean, classes start for those kids Monday. So, but they've been on campus for 2.5 weeks. But there wasn't much I could do from a strength and conditioning perspective, because basically the first couple of weeks they are running 2 or 3 a day practices and just trying to like weed some kids out. So they run a ton, they gas them, and just try to make sure that everybody's like actually committed to the program. And then, so it's like me as a strength coach, I can't then on top of that say, hey, we're also going to meet at 6 a.m. in the morning and do a hour and a half workout.
It's not ideal.
Plus, not to mention the fact that they just have, the coaches pretty much need all the contact time they can get, because they've got 2 weeks before they have to play their first competitive match. So they start this weekend with their competitive schedule. So like the soccer teams are only going to be going early for a couple times a week. Not to mention the fact that I'm not full time there, so I can only have contact hours with the kids so many hours a week. So you kind of have to prioritize who gets most of the time. And for the soccer kids, it's going to be, let's do what we can in a couple hours a week without fatiguing them for their matches. And then they have a pretty intensive schedule from August, September through hopefully deep into October, and then probably give them maybe like a week or so to chill out, and then we'll hit it hard with them in the end of October, beginning of November, because that'll be their beginning of their off season. They do play competitive or a little bit of a spring schedule, but it's not. They're pretty much exhibition matches. So
Gotcha.
then with the baseball and softball players, they report to campus on Monday for the first day of class, and we pretty much get to go right away with them, because we've got. That's the fun part about kind of the spring sports is you have, when kids show up in the fall, you have all fall and all winter to gear them up and get them ready for spring. So that's been the fun part, is just kind of like getting to map out, periodizing for them, you know, almost a 52-week calendar where we go, hey, we show up on August 22nd, it's our testing day, and then here's how it's all going to map out. So the way I've kind of structured it is kind of based on, they do play a little bit in the fall, so they'll do some, like I think the boys play in a showcase, the girls have a couple road trips, and so it's working around those schedules. But basically I built in essentially 4 weeks of really like hitting it hard, and then like a deload week, and kind of doing that all the way up until they start competitively when the weather gets nice, and obviously they'll be gone for winter break. They get a week off for Thanksgiving. But it's also been interesting just like talking with the other coaches, because there hasn't been a strength coaching their presence there yet. And so from what I can tell, everybody's really on board with like having a consistent voice that's kind of in charge of forcing these kids to do something in the weight room and then actually making it productive. So and the AD there is super cool, and he's been very supportive, yet at the same time hands off, kind of letting me do my own thing, which is awesome. He's just really in it for the athletes. He wants them to have a good experience. So he's like, whatever you need to do so that they have a good experience, I'm on board with, which has been great, because as you know, I would be a little bit more hesitant having been a gym owner for the last 7 years to like go and then have to work for someone and write the programs they want me to write. So it's kind of cool that I get do my own thing too. But so yeah, and then on top of that, I'm also doing like their arm care program. There's been no arm care implemented there for baseball or softball, as far as I can tell, as well as mobility for all 4 sports. So mobility programs, extra hip and hamstring stuff for the soccer kids, and then a nutrition, not a nutrition program, but sort of like a nutritional education, because I don't think they're gonna know anything about anything.
No, they don't know anything. They like eating Cheetos, I think. And drinking beer.
Mountain Dew, beer, and Cheetos.
Yeah.
So
is Fortnite a food?
Yeah. How many calories can you get from Fortnite? Oh yeah, was that a thing in the DR? Do they know what Fortnite is?
I think so. I don't know. I didn't ask enough people. I'm pretty sure our tour guide Mateo, he plays it, but tomato.
So yeah, I mean, with all that stuff, it's been a time suck, but it's been I've been enjoyed it. I've also been trying to read a lot about not only strength and conditioning for soccer, because we do a little bit here, but we don't currently have a team of 18-year-old strength or soccer kids. So just like reading about strength and conditioning from like Manchester United, what they do, which the European model is fascinating, where they with club sports there, you're basically everybody plays for a club, and you start when you're 10U or 8U even, and then they start to pick out who the best kids are, and they start to funnel you into your appropriate track in terms of what team you should be playing, what level you should be playing at for the club, and then they control, from as far as I can tell, from a physical standpoint, everything that you do. I mean, they write your nutrition stuff. They write when you're at the highest level, they write your nutrition stuff. They write your workouts. They're all and they're all giant teams. So the soccer coach, the strength coach, the conditioning coach, the performance coach, there's coaches for everything, and they're all collaborative. So everybody's writing all of their stuff based on what the other people are writing. So it's really, really fascinating, and it seems comprehensive, and it's no wonder that America gets their ass beat by European and any other country really in soccer, is because they have it. That's all they do.
Yeah,
so
the academy's starting young. That makes sense that they end up building players from the ground up. Whereas here, I guess. Yeah. Does anyone play soccer? No, a lot of people play soccer. But it's just done differently. Yeah.
And it's it's the thing we always come back to, which is, you get the impression that those kids, when they start playing soccer at 8, that's what they do. Especially if they're good, that's all they do. Whereas if you're a 10-year-old here, you play soccer, but you're also going to do chess, and you're going to play baseball, and you're going to
chess.
Yeah,
that was what you threw out there.
Well, there's things that are going to take up your time.
Oh, chess, gotcha. Yeah. Oh yeah,
I'm assuming
big chess part of the country right here, Midwest. Yeah,
yeah, we're
chess
America,
chess hub of America.
Yeah.
Well, my alma mater, UMBC, was only known for chess because their chess team would beat Harvard and Yale. They were
until last year.
Until last year. Now we're sort of known for having good basketball one year.
Name 3 famous chess players. Ben Fisher, isn't that a guy?
I was just gonna make up names from that Simpsons episode where soccer comes to Springfield. We talked about this. So we talked about one of
also,
our
we have to reference Simpsons in every episode.
At one of our team dinners in the DR, so we played against this orphanage, and the padre, who's the priest, the father who runs the orphanage, he had a big ceremony for us coming there. It was a big deal to them, much more so than the other academies, because obviously I think with that orphanage, they're kind of just there, and for other people to visit and have this sort of cultural experience with the other kids, I think that's really important to them, because they can easily, I imagine, just become forgotten. So we had this big ceremony, and they actually had they announced, they had a guy with a microphone and a sound system, so he announced the baseball game. Did it in Spanish. And me, being me, I was hey, maybe they'll let me announce for our guys one inning. So I walked over and I asked, and they're yeah, sure. So I announced for our team when we came up in the 5th or something. But so when you listen to them announcing, it was a constant sort of chatter, and maybe that's just the Spanish language. It seems there's just more words coming out. But so when I went over and I announced, I was all right, here's Johnny coming up, number 14. I threw out some little facts, a lot of which I made up. Oh, favorite food, asparagus, blah, blah, blah. But even then, it was just after that, I was what else do I say? I'm just here? Because you need someone else to kind of go back and forth. But it got a little quiet. I thought I was gonna be more fun than I was. But anyway, after my inning, so at dinner that night, they were we were talking a little bit about it, and they're yeah, you're just a little quiet compared to the other guy. And I'm yeah, I don't know how he could fill that much space. And then I referred back to the Simpsons episode where soccer comes to Springfield. Do you remember this one? Oh my God, it's so good. So soccer comes to Springfield, and they're advertising on the TV, and it's like, you know, who was that country guy who, like, it's like, are you ready for some football? Who was that guy?
Hank Williams Jr.
Was it Hank Williams? I don't know. But
Hank Williams Jr. I think.
so they're
Check
like,
me on that internet.
I feel like that's not it, but
It is.
I thought it was the guy with, like, he looked kind of like the Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yeah, he wears a cowboy hat, long hair.
Okay, I just don't know who Hank Williams is then. Okay.
Are you ready for some football?
Okay, then you got it. Okay.
I think.
So yeah, so then it's kind of like that, but they're like, all your favorite stars will be there, like Paniagua, Aniagua, Aniagua 2, Maniagua, Maniagua. They're just like rattling off names that no one's ever heard of. And Homer's like, I've never heard of any of those people. He's like, and they'll all be signing autographs. And he goes, woohoo. But then, so the real point of the story was everyone in Springfield goes to the soccer match. And they're all standing there kicking, and they have the kickoff. And basically, this is their parody of soccer as a sport in general. They're all just standing there, and they just kick it to one guy. He's just like, the halfback passes to the center, back to the. They're just like passing it around, and no one's like even moving. Mm-hmm. And Kent Brockman's up in the broadcast booth, and he's like, halfback passes to center. Center passes back to the halfback. Back to center. Center holds it. Holds it, and then they go to the Spanish broadcast, and he goes, halfback passes to center passes back, he holds it. He's just like going crazy. And I just thought of that because that was like basically exactly how it was. Like their guy was just chattering constantly about I don't know what. Like I wish I could hear it because it's just like I don't know how you feel that much time. I mean, it was like a 15-year-old kid's baseball game. But,
right.
Yeah, anyway, so that's my little Simpsons
always relevant.
Randomness. Yeah,
Simpsons
there's something for
relevant.
everything on that show. It's amazing.
So, yeah. And then also have been prepping for my class, which starts on Monday as well.
Oh, man.
So I'm teaching again Intro to Strength Training and Strength Training 2 at Heartland. And I just had to go back and, like, I taught it last semester, obviously, but I had to go back and make a lot of changes. Just because, like, the first time you do something, you have no idea what the hell you're doing.
Yeah, so go over that with us. Let's give us the year.
What the curriculum is?
No, how it was teaching these snot-nosed college kids how to strength good. A lot of what was the goblet squat term or whatever?
Oh man. Oh, what was it?
Grundle squats or something?
No, it wasn't Grundle squats. It was something weird though. Gobble squats.
Gobble squats.
Gobble squats. So yeah, it was. Here's my 2 cents on teaching. When I'm in the class and I'm teaching the subject matter, I'm having a blast. Like I really enjoy. And when we go, so basically the way the class is outlined is we have 45 to 55 minutes of lecture, and then we go down for a lab in the gym where we do workout stuff. And so all said and done, the class is like an hour and 35 minutes, something like that. Well, hour, 40 minutes, whatever. And that little chunk of time is great, especially when they ask questions. Like and I know that's kind of cliche. Like you always hear teachers like, engage in the class.
Engage in class, guys.
Yeah, but it actually is because you're like, oh, they're listening to what the hell I'm saying. But then also you feel like you have an opportunity to legitimately teach someone something. And so, like last year, the first couple lectures were very dry, and that was my fault because I just basically like they gave me a text, and so I just did the text from like cover to cover essentially. And the first chapter of the text is like sliding filament theory. So it's really granular.
That really gets people going. Yeah.
Yeah, really granular, like microanatomy of what muscle fibers are and sarcoplasms and all that garbage. And so
is that still a theory?
I don't think so. It's still referred to as a theory, but I don't know why it is.
That's a weird thing to me. Anyway.
But so I think I could kind of see them all go like, oh God, this is a 2-hour elective. Like what the hell is going on? And so I made the first quiz I thought was like really easy, even given the subject matter, which I knew was difficult, but I didn't really need them to know what it was either. The average it was a 5-point quiz. I think the average on the first quiz was like 1.5. Like everyone just bombed it. I was like, okay, kind of got to adjust. And so it was just like, then from there, I just slowly as the year went on, I don't want to say watered down, that sounds bad, but I just like made things a lot simpler. And just, I think my mistake was I should have gone into the class assuming they knew nothing. like 0 things, which some kids knew a lot, and some kids literally did know nothing. But you can't program for the common denominator. You have to start at the bottom. So
yeah, with Instagram, kids know that if you meal prep on Sunday, you get the 6-pack abs,
yeah.
all 6 of them.
Yeah. So then, and it was like it was frustrating at times because, again, this is going to be me on my soapbox and sound like a grumpy old man, but they pretty universally, it seems, they're bad writers, so they can't write at all.
Yeah.
And it's
America. And
I had I can't remember if I said this on the podcast or not, but I had big aspirations. I remember one of the things I said in my interview when I was applying for the job was, oh, I'm really excited to, like, I want to do the strength training component and all that kind of stuff, but I really, like, am going to take on the opportunity to, like, teach these kids how to write. But then when you go to do that, it's such a time-consuming process that there's just, like, I mean, how do you teach someone to write you can't. Yeah. It has to be a dedicated course.
Well, because they'd have you get 30 papers, they have like 30 different errors that need to then be addressed.
That's the thing. And I was like going through, and how do you can't go through and edit and then explain all your edits. That's just like, that would be the thing to do, is go through all the edits and then comment on the edits and be like, hey, here's why I did all these things. But that by itself is an exhaustive process. But then also relaying that to them is impossible.
You'd screen share it.
And maybe I'll do that.
Do they turn in papers in paper or digitally? How does college work? Tell me how college works these days.
So that's the other thing, is there's not an elegant way. Here's how I give quizzes. I make the quiz in Microsoft Word. I put it on the projector. I cut out half pieces of paper, and they write like A, B, C, D on the paper. And then I have to hand grade them. And I'm like, is there not a more elegant way to do this? And there's there's tools like Scantron and stuff like that, but I don't know if those are available. I don't know what the learning curve on that kind of stuff is. For papers, someone on the first day of class handed me like a piece of paper for an assignment, and I was like, no, that's not how this works. So they email all their papers.
Okay, so there's no papers anymore.
No. Well, I'm trying to eliminate everything. I do a lot of like tests and stuff on Google Forms, because you can do like
you're allowed to do that.
Yeah, and then they also have this client called Blackboard, which is like, every college there's a million different versions of this, but it's basically, every class has a little portal, and then you as a student, like as the instructor, I can like put PowerPoints on there and like dump stuff into it, and then as a student you can access it, and that's where your grade book is and all that kind of stuff.
So if they do Google Forms, is that like in class right then, like they have their laptop in your presence, or this is an at-home thing?
What I've been doing, it's an at-home thing. So I just like throw the link up onto Blackboard. So I'm like, here's your homework assignment, and it's like written in like blah 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 blah. To complete this, follow this link, and they go boop, and then they turn it in.
So there's nothing preventing them from just like all 5 kids or like 5 friends sitting there and collaboratively doing the Google Forms quiz together.
Nope.
But okay, that's academic dishonesty.
Nor do I really care. Yeah, don't do that.
I guess there's no way to get around that. That's what I was curious about. Interesting.
So that was like, I was like, yeah, I want to teach all these kids how to write good. And then I just realized I couldn't. And then I was like, oh, this is how it happens, is if you don't.
Everyone's complacent.
Yeah, if you don't, everyone's complacent with the system. If you don't learn it in high school, then you're toast. Or junior high, I guess. I don't know. Then you're toast, because you're not going to learn it in high school. But if you don't have it by college, like, good luck. I mean, you can take writing courses in college. I did a couple of those, but I don't know. It's just like, and then my biggest word of advice to them is typically, when you write something, spend 10 seconds and just read it out loud. And if it sounds stupid, make it not sound stupid. Like, most of them can speak intelligently.
Yeah, that's.
But it's when they write, it's like, cat like food, cat eat food, good. Cat thirsty too. And it's like, that's not
those
how
cats
you
are
would
often
speak.
thirsty. Yeah.
So that, and then it's just like, there does seem to be. Are we millennials? I don't know.
No, we are. Millennials go up to like 40.
Okay.
There's parents in our
What
program.
are they? Are they millennials?
Wait, what?
How low does it go?
I feel like millennials, I looked this up somewhat recently, and millennials extend almost to 40-year-olds.
So let's say it's like 40 to
12, maybe? I don't know.
Oh, really?
I don't know. But
Okay.
it's a shockingly wide range. It's like 30+ years.
They
So we're all garbage.
Okay, we're all garbage. That's kind of what I figured. And over 40 is garbage, and under 12 is garbage.
When I saw this headline, that was actually last night. It said, millennial couple bikes through ISIS territory to prove that love still, or like that goodwill still exists, and they got murdered.
Of course it
Which
is.
I'm like, that doesn't sound accurate. So I Googled like loosely the title, and it was like, yeah, that's not really accurate. This couple was just like biking. They had been like touring the country or somewhere, like one of the stands, and in general were like very happy about how much like love they received as they were just like kind of like backpacking through this country. But then they went through the wrong part and they got murdered. They didn't like try to prove that
Prove
they
a
could
point.
bike across this place to like that love existed. Like that wasn't what it was. Someone just made that title up.
Clickbaity title.
Anyway, yeah, very clickbaity.
It just seems like in general.
Because that would be a very millennial thing to do.
Yes, it would.
Like, oh, I don't believe in.
Yeah. This is all just a social construct, man.
Yeah. No. Anyway.
And so, but there does seem to be just like a general level of apathy, and sometimes they're just not as smart as you think they are, and so it's that can be frustrating at times. But I would say, like overall, it's very enjoyable, and I like the subject matter, and I like that it's an outlet for me to maintain a foot in like the research and like maintaining a presence in like all the strength and conditioning journals. And one of the things they have to do is go find an recent article on pretty much anything even remotely tied to strength conditioning and kind of like come back and report on it. And that's always interesting for me because, you know, if you have 20 people in a class, you have 20 articles that get presented in class.
Yeah.
And it just kind of keeps you up to date on stuff, which before this class, I would find it was difficult to either find the time or the inclination to go and read the recent research, just because it's like, I don't know. It sometimes feels like you don't need to. Like it gets easy to be complacent when you are a gym owner and you do your own thing for, you know, however long. So I like that part of it too. And yeah.
Yeah, the writing thing is interesting because I actually wrote about this in a story I wrote recently. But I think the last time I was corrected on English was in humanities class in high school, and this teacher I had, Mr. Nelson, he taught English, and he was like a real smart guy. He was like average size, had like kind of like salt and pepper hair, and he was like he's like one of those professors that was like real smart, but he would like engage you. It was kind of funny and like whatever. So I like liked his classes. My older brother liked his classes, and I had him for English, and I also had him for humanities. But I don't remember any like English rules, like what a present participle is, if that's a thing, any of that stuff. But I always had a natural proclivity for writing. But in my humanities class, I don't know why I still remember this, but I would get papers that had a lot of red ink back, which was not like normal for me. But in his class, he would mark them up, and I remember AO, AO, AO all over my paper, and like we didn't have like a system where I like knew what there wasn't like a key of like abbreviations, and I was like, hey, Mr. Nelson, like, can you explain to me what AO is? I don't know what this means. He's like, it's an agreement error. I'm like, okay, hey, Mr. Nelson, can you explain to me what an agreement error is? And he's like, well, that's when you have two subjects or something in the same sentence that don't agree. So for an example of this is you're writing an article in the first person, and then you like switch to third person. So it's like, here's an article on how to pitch a baseball. Baseball players should pitch baseballs good. When you pitch a baseball, you should make sure you do this. So it'd be like, or baseball players should pitch baseballs. So when you pitch a baseball, do it good. Which that's a terrible sentence, obviously, but
Right.
You're in one hand speaking in third person, referring to baseball players. Baseball players should do this, but then you switch to like you, as if you're talking to a baseball player. And I'm the baseball content editor for EliteBaseballPerformance.com, and so we get submissions from baseball coaches and strength coaches and PTs and whatever, and they submit articles, and they're also not well written, but probably the most common error I see is just agreement error, and it's just like constant where they're switching from tense. It's like, yeah, you know, baseball players should do this and they should do this, and you know, you got to make sure that you do this, and you have to make sure. In the same sentence they're switching, and it's just like it takes actually a lot of work to like comb through the entire thing and make it all one tense, to where it's a lot of times it's easier to make it all speaking to someone like, hey, if you're gonna deadlift, you should do this, do this, do this. Just like do it in the whatever tense that is, because I don't know, but there's constant flipping. So I like but my point of this story was we were in humanities class, it wasn't English class. We were learning about like Plato and Greek mythology and all this combination of like philosophical kind of stuff. But he still graded on grammar, and he didn't care. And even in college, kids would complain like, "Why am I getting points taken off? Why did I get a C on this? Like the content was good, but why am I getting like a C in a history class because my grammar's bad? This isn't English class. This is history class." It's like, well, it's because your article was garbage, but I don't know. So they just don't get it. And I think you're right that once you get past high school, I don't think anyone corrects you. They just give you either good grades or are complacent, or they give you bad grades. But to like sit everyone down, like maybe you could mark up all their papers with like little, key words for you, like AO, agreement error. You could just like mark them all up. And if they come to you and they want to know why and they want to learn, then they do. And if they don't, then they don't. But
yeah, because it's like, with that agreement error thing, that'd be like someone doing an RDL, and you're like, hey, you're doing that RDL wrong. And they're like, okay. Like, what do I do next?
Yeah.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I had a very similar experience on that exact thing with I remember my dad reading one of my papers when I was really young and telling me that. And I just wrote an article for medium.com. Go check it out. And this morning I texted my sister, who writes really well, and I was like, hey, can you just like check? And it was weird because I wrote the article in first person, which like I'd never really done before. So it's basically like, I wake up and I do this and I blah, 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 which I'd never really written like that before. And so I knew there were probably going to be those agreement errors in there somewhere. And I was like, hey, you can just check this and like make sure all my tenses match up. And because that's like one of the things you don't really notice, because it's just like, I don't know, you get chugging along and you're writing and your brain flips back and forth. But
well, it's easy to like miss stuff. So like my book is in my third draft, and my dad, I'll still send articles in once in a while to edit. And, just like a lot of times especially because I write how I speak, it's easy to be like, well, I haven't had to do this, or just like you can use like 4 crappy little words to make up like one word, and I'll use like a lot of passive tense where he's like, you shouldn't say I should have had to gone. You should have said I should go, or like just stuff like I can't think of a good example at the moment, but a lot of times will drag sentences out a little bit where it's just like, hey, chop these 3 words out and make them this word, or do this and do that. So it's easy to just lose track because it sounds fine in your head as you're reading it. Maybe it sounds like the way you talk, but it's not really very concise. And I think I was a philosophy major, obviously, and in psychology. I had a double in philosophy and psychology. And so they train you to write a certain way, and it's a very concise way. Psychology much more so, because you're writing like experimental design papers, and it's very like, the procedures was this, we skinned 4 cats for this experiment. It's very like cut and dry. There's no flowery language, where in philosophy it's very logical and deductive, but there's sometimes more flowery language to like be persuasive. If you read the old philosophy, it's just so hard to read because they're like, they're just like getting very,
they gotta show you how much they know.
Yeah, in addition to being, so they're a little bit different. But when I took, so there was never any collaboration or anything. Like in those classes, you just write 2 big papers a semester and that's it. But my senior year, I took an entrepreneurship class, and we had to collaborate on like a business plan thing. And I was not a fan of collaborating, but basically you had to write up 5-7 page paper or whatever, pretty normal. But the 4 of us had to collaborate on it, and I was like, hey, just submit, like, because a lot of teams, what they did was they all wrote one section of it, so it was like 5 different voices, which the professor ended up being very harsh on that. But I just was like, hey, I'll write it. Like, this will be my contribution, because I don't want to do all this other stuff. I don't want to do research. Like, I don't want to do research or whatever else we did. I'm like, so I'll just make my chunk. I'll write the whole thing. So just submit your like chunk of it or whatever, and I'll just compile it and I'll write the whole thing in one voice. So we did that, and we got a good grade because of it. He said we were the only group that actually did that. He said because he could tell when writers switched. But when my partners gave me their like 1.5 page papers, I just like read through the first paragraph. I'm like, okay, he hasn't said anything of value yet. It's just like lots of sentences like in this paper you're gonna learn this, and then you're gonna and blah 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 blah, and there just like isn't any content to any of the sentences. Just like that was the big thing with A, my humanities class in high school, but B, my philosophy classes. they would just take a red line and just mark out whole paragraphs sometimes. Like, there's nothing in this paragraph. Like, they're just words, but there's nothing supporting your conclusion at the end of the paper. Like, there's literally no content. Like, that whole intro sounds nice, and like having an intro is like, you still need to have an intro. I'm not saying like your intro should be like super dense with content, but your intro should be sort of still concise and explain to people what's going to happen next in the paper. And then after that, it's like every paragraph in a philosophy pager has to support the conclusion. So it's like, premise A is this paragraph, premise B is this paragraph, premise C is this paragraph, and it just goes on like that. And they would just mark out for 4 sentences. I'm like, oh God, there's only 1 sentence of this 6-sentence paragraph left. Yeah. Why are you doing this? Right. And then you just learn over time, like, what a sentence looks like when it actually has meaningful stuff in it. You know, like, you know, you're trying to convince someone that cats are great. You can't like say cats are great in 4 different ways with that has no with meaning.
4 different synonyms.
They're great because they have fur. They're great because they will purr at you when they're happy. They're great when they have little claws and they can like scratch stuff, and it's whatever. I don't know why people like cats. I'm not a huge cat fan, but like, you just learn that you have to have meaning in every sentence. And as I read my partner's papers, like, they gave me a paper, like a page and a half, and it had like a third of a page of content.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like okay, well, better me than your professor, I guess. But I don't think professors really grade that super harshly anymore, because like you said, you just like can't.
Right. And it's like, at least for me, it's you know, when someone submits a paper, let's say they submit a paper on some strength and conditioning program, I'm like, that is always a conundrum. Is like, all right, this paper sucks, but the 5 bullet items in the rubric that I had supplied, they've touched on. So it's like, okay, am I grading it based on this certain criteria, or am I grading it on being a human being who needs to be able to like intelligently articulate a point? And that's where it's like, I don't know. And so I teach a 2-credit-hour elective at a community college, so I choose to be pretty lenient. But
yeah, and it's just I don't know. It's a situation where, you know, so I edited a article about long toss recently, and the title of the article, like, you know, is like 10 keys to having a better long toss session. And as I started reading the article, I'm like, okay, I don't like, none of the first bunch of paragraphs like supported what the article was about. And, like, at the very end, there were like the 10 tips. So I was like, kind of went through it. I'm like, this doesn't build in any logical sense. Like, there's a couple other things, but there was no structure to it. So I had to like sort of restructure it, and with our chief editor Mike, he made some tweaks himself, and it was just like, okay, because he had a lot of stuff, like just extra stuff, like instead of just the 10 keys, it was like, here's some other things, but they were just kind of like off to the side.
Save that for another.
So it was just like, okay, we got to like, and just like making good headings and making other things to just corral it, where it's like, okay, well, you know, I kind of tweaked it where it's like, okay, here's things you need to know before you start long tossing. Here's some other considerations. Here's how you long toss, and then once you're long tossing, then here's some tips to like make it better. But that's another thing people just tend to lack, is just a logical flow where you're leading them down a path. So if you're going to give people 10 keys to long toss, and you're not assuming that they know how to do it at all, you first have to kind of explain what long toss is, then explain, you know, what a good long toss session looks like, what a bad one looks like, and once they know everything about long toss and they're clear, then you can give them keys to like make it better. But it was just kind of like thrown around in a little random fashion like that, and it's just that more than anything
for someone like that,
what philosophy kind of like teaches you.
Yeah.
So like
for someone like that,
things.
Would you suggest that they outline before they write?
Yeah, I do.
Could you outline?
I don't outline very often.
I don't either.
But for me, like I've just like learned to sort of just start writing, and I know where I'm going, and I just like know the structure. I don't feel like I need to outline as much anymore. But with like different things I do, so like with our online coursework for my courses and for the senators' courses, like that stuff I tend to outline a little more, because I need to know what, like, all right, if we're teaching infield or something, what's the first thing that they need to know, and then what's the last thing to know, and is there an order there? So it just depends on the topic. But when I write articles, I typically don't, because I know what my title is, And that's what my conclusion is, essentially. Going back to philosophy, and then what are the things that either they need to support, like to convince someone of that conclusion, or what things lead them up to then needing that conclusion if that's like a higher level thing. So I don't know.
Makes sense. Yeah, I don't outline either, but it is, if I'm gonna do something, I mean, the length of the content is typically what dictates that. Or if it's gonna be something over, I don't know, 3,000 words, then I probably need to outline, just because I'll get lost if I just start.
For sure.
But
a lot of people stream of consciousness, and they'll have like these huge bricks of text, and you just like get lost. And on the internet, I mean, the internet's a different animal too, where people read headings. They don't so much read words anymore. So if you don't have good headings that have a logical, like people are like, that's how I read. I don't read most articles, and I'll scan, and I'm looking for the piece of info. So if I'm reading an article, it's like 5 ways to front squat better, which I don't know that there's that many ways to front squat better, but I'd be like, okay, maybe I'll know a couple of these, but I'll learn a couple things. So let's roll through, and I'm looking for headings. Like heading 3, do it while wearing a bunny suit. It's like, oh, I haven't done that before. So
give that a shot.
Then you like stop there, and then you check, oh, that paragraph's really dense, like 13 lines. I'm not going to read that. So you go, oh, that's a little 3 one. I'll read that. But people read in chunks for sure nowadays. The internet's very different. And I know because I do it too. And I feel like, oh, I'm not as lazy as normal people, but you definitely are. You just learn to like cut through the noise. So on the one hand, it makes you discouraged to write like longer form articles because you feel like no one's going to read them. But I don't know. I don't know. It's a time and a place.
I was going to say, I think those places exist. Like that Medium thing that you turned me on to. I think that's a place for like longer form stuff where people are. But there's like the instructional stuff. Like like you said, it has to be boink boink boink. Where it's hard to be flowy, and it's like when I write, I enjoy being a little more flowery but it's like
bloviating.
Yeah, but sometimes you just got to be like, I want to say this funny thing, but it's a waste of time.
Yeah, and when it's instructional, like I've liked the format of putting a video on a blog post and just like opener, and then just kind of like some bullet points and like quick like one explanation paragraph. I feel like that's really like to the point. It'll like teach someone really quick. Whereas like with instructional stuff, it just seems like they want to skim and just get the information. So if it's like squat on your heels, like they just if that line is just like right there, like, hey, I'll take that, because people absorb so much info from Instagram and Twitter, and that's how that info is presented.
Yep.
So they're looking for this like short, like quick tutorial thing, and just bullet points, and yeah, just there's a lot of different ways to get your info now on the interwebs.
Like podcasts.
Like podcasts, yeah. Who listens to these things? Who listens to these? I don't know.
Who knows? It's going out there into the ether. Yeah, but that's a good place to stop, I think, for episode 48.
Yep.
And hopefully we'll be a little bit more regular with our schedule now.
Yeah, look for a couple things coming out for us. Number one, you'll see more regular social media posts, so be sure to follow us on Instagram and Snapchat and all that stuff. Warbird Academy, Warbird Senators, Coach Dan Blewett. Anything from you?
I just posted my first Instagram post today in I think a year.
Yeah.
Lucas.a.cook.
And also, we're going to do some Facebook Lives here, maybe like twice a month. So just like quick videos, like Q&A kind of stuff. And we'll have more YouTube content and hopefully regular podcasts. So yeah. Follow us. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube if you're a YouTuber. And we'll
like us, review us.
Yeah, all that stuff. We have a decent amount of reviews on iTunes.
21.
That's not
bad.
That many? No, I don't have that many on my show. So,
hey, I've listened to podcasts with less reviews than that, so we're doing all right.
All right. Adios, people.